Alright, so this is the beginning of the economics review. I thought I might start by displaying the answers to what we're about to go over, so you could maybe pause the video and check your answers quickly. These are available on my website also. You can get the answers to, you'll eventually be able to get the answers to all of them. Okay. And then we'll go to the questions. We'll move as quickly as possible. A lot of these are sort of repeating the same idea. And we're going to see that whoever made this review put a bunch of comparative advantage questions in here that take a long time to do. Unless you kind of figure it out without having to do anything. Which is always what a smart test taker does. Alright? So we'll get to those. I'll show you what I mean. Alright, let's start with number 1. And it'll remind us of topics to review. And then we'll find the right answer. But this question will not be on the AP test, of course. None of these will. But they will remind us of things to review and how to take a test. The crucial problem of economics, okay, is decision making. The reason we have to make decisions is because we have limited resources and unlimited wants. That's the crucial problem. It's not anything else. We have scarce resources. Scarce actually implies both limit and desirability. Scarce resources and unlimited wants. Those are the two fundamental assumptions that drive the fundamental problem of economics. And that leads to other questions that we have to ask and answer. Okay? So it's not a fair tax system. It's not providing social goods and services. It's not developing a price mechanism that reflects the relative scarcities of products and service resources. That might be tempting because it's long and it's got the word scarcity in it. But read all the choices. Allocating scarce productive resources to satisfy wants. I like that. It doesn't say unlimited wants, but that's the best answer so far. If E says unlimited wants, I might put it. E enacting a set of laws that protects resources from overuse. That's not it. It's got to be D. All right? Okay. Well, the fundamental problem of economics leads to another concept of, if we have unlimited wants but only scarce resources to satisfy those wants, a good example is, I have an unlimited desire for both sleep and time to be awake and do stuff. Unlimited. I can't have both. Every time I choose to have one, I've got to give up a little bit of the other. You can call that a trade-off. The idea of having to sacrifice one good thing to get another good thing. But the AP test likes to ask about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is what you could have had instead. It's your next best option. The opportunity cost of an hour of sleep is an hour of being awake. It's really specifically the best use of those resources. Alright, if your top number one thing you would have done if you were awake is play video games, your opportunity cost was an hour of video game playing. If fifth on the list was walking your dog, but that's not your opportunity cost. It's always the next best option. The next best option to your hour of sleep was an hour of video games. Your opportunity cost is an hour of video games. If for me it's walking the dog, then my opportunity cost, if the next best option is walking the dog, my opportunity cost is an hour of walking the dog. Okay? They love to ask about opportunity cost because it's so fundamental. And they try to trick you into thinking it's financial cost. They try to trick you into saying, hey, what's the cost of going to college? And you write, oh, you have to buy books and tuition, and you gotta pay for somewhere to stay. And that's a trick. That's the financial cost. That's the money cost. The opportunity cost is what you would have bought with that money and how you would have used your time instead if you hadn't gone. What are your next best options for that money and that time that you're going to spend in college? What you gave up. Okay? For a society, for an economy, it has to do with production. If you choose to make a tank to help you fight wars, what was your next best option, what you could have produced instead? Maybe your opportunity cost was a car that one of your people can drive around and use to run a business. Or you could have built a highway or something. Alright, so when one decision is made, the next best alternative is called opportunity cost. Okay, notice they have some related ideas around here. Comparative disadvantages was not a thing. It's called comparative advantage. But they try to trick you with some related concepts, but there's one that's clearly the next best alternative. That is opportunity cost. Alright, there's about 10 more questions in this review about that exact idea. Okay, what's of the following is true if the PPC, sometimes they call it the PPF, the Production Possibilities Frontier, Don't be bothered by that. It's both a frontier, it's an outward limit, a frontier, and it's a curve. So it's the PPC or the PPF. Is a curved line concave to the origin. So I'm going to swing over to the board and draw one. Because why not draw one? It won't take me very long, and it will help me maybe answer this question. All right, a reminder of what concave to the origin. That Navy test likes to use that language to make sure you know what that means. And it's basically the only way I've drawn a PPC. The only two legitimate ways to draw a PPC are perfectly flat, which I never really do. You might need to, and there's a question about those in a second. And a curved PPC. And they always curve like that. They always bow out. And that is called concave to the origin. Meaning if you're standing at the origin, and you look at it, it looks more like a cave than a vex. Convex would be this. And that's maybe what a demand curve looks like, but it's certainly not what a PPC looks like. When you draw your PPCs for a free response, make sure they touch because they're supposed to, but don't let any of your other curves touch, except maybe perfectly vertical curves can touch and perfectly horizontal curves can touch. But in general, you want, just to be safe, you want your demand curves and your supply curves kind of floating out there. All right? But the PPC needs to touch and touch, both places. This is concave to the origin. All right, remember the idea of the PPC is in an ultra-simplified situation, an economy a society might be choosing, should we produce good A or good B? All right, should we produce pizza or factories? Those are both nice to have. Pizza you can eat. Factories will make you even more stuff in the future. All right, well, what does the question say? I'm sorry. But let's just finish this. The PPC, remember, is a description, it's a model of, it's a picture of, if you are employing all your resources in the best possible way, the most efficient possible way, how much could you have? And you could have any of these combinations if you're doing the best. Any point on this curve is a possibility. This many pizzas and this many factories. This many pizzas and this many factories. And the AP people love to trick you into saying one of these is better. One of these is preferable. Is that true? Which one is the best point? Well, there's not one. We don't answer that question in economics. That's a normative question. Which one's the best? Give me a break. Okay? That's a trick. Okay? The question of, for a given society, having the right combination, the best combination for a given society is not something you can determine as a test taker. But that concept is called allocative efficiency. Choosing the mix that society wants. If this society really likes pizza, we might choose lots of pizza and only a few factories. Well, that would be the right allocative mix for this society. That's called allocative efficiency. But you're never able to determine what it actually is. That is always a trick. All right? And if you're not using all of your resources, so you have unemployment, sometimes that is because you have insufficient demand. In other words, you could make lots of pizza and lots of factories, but your society doesn't demand that many pizzas or factories, or both. You might say, well, look guys, some of y'all have to be out of a job. People aren't buying this many pizzas. People aren't buying this many factories. And if some of your workers aren't working, let me go through the resources again. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Some of your land is unemployed. If some of your labor is unemployed. If some of your machines aren't on, your capital is unemployed. And I guess if some of your entrepreneurs are unemployed, you can be operating inside the PPC. Okay? And of course, once you employ them again, the PPC doesn't move. The PPC is the best you can do. It's your possibilities if you're doing the best you can do. If you're underperforming and all of a sudden you get your act together, that doesn't move the PPC. That's the classic trick in AP Economics with the PPC, is to trick you to move in the curve when you have unemployed resources and you just put them to work. Those resources existed. They could have been working. The possibilities were out there, and they don't move. If you put them to work, you just move onto the curve, or towards the curve. All right? Then another idea is the idea that you can also be inside the curve if maybe you are using your resources, but you're using them in an inefficient way. You're using them in a costly way. All right? So that's called, if you're doing it right, it's called productive efficiency. If you're not being efficient, we call it productive inefficiency. And that is, let me think, because this is economics, and I have to think. I can't just memorize. Let me think. We want to go low cost, right? if we're doing things right, our costs will be low. So if you're being efficient, your costs are low. If you fail to produce goods in the low-cost manner, you're being inefficient, and that puts you inside the curve. That puts you inside the curve. The curve is still out there because you could get your act together. You could say, hey, you know, people with red hair, we used to discriminate against you. We used to force you into, you know, everybody had to be manual laborers and had red hair because you were beneath us. But we've reformed our ways. We've gotten our act together. That was too costly. All these geniuses with red hair could have been producing lots of pizzas. All right? Or lots of factories. We're going to let you go to a less costly productive method. We were giving up a lot by putting you to work sweeping floors. Now you go come up with ways to make pizza efficiently. Come up with ways to make factories. Now I'm using you more efficiently. I'm using you in a less costly way, and I can move on to the curve. All right. And then, by the way, points outside the curve are impossible unless we gain extra technology or extra resources. Okay? If those extra technology or resources help both goods, we move out on both extremes. And we draw an arrow to show the greater what happened. If your extra technology or your extra resources only helps one of the producing in one of the goods, you only move out on that extreme. But, of course, the ultra-advanced idea is that, say we were producing right here at point X this many pizzas in this many factories, and we gained some kind of factory-producing prowess that we didn't have before, some new technology or new resource for producing factories, that we might just keep our factory level the same. Because we're so good at it, devote less resources to producing just as many factories. Let's say it used to be 10. And we'll bump our pizza production from 20 to 25. So getting better at one good can allow you to devote more resources to the other good and produce more of that. Or more of both. It's not hard to model, up and to the right. Okay, so points outside the curve are unattainable given our current technology and resources. Let's see if we can answer the question now. Zoom in just a touch. Alright. Well, here we are in question 3. Alright, if it's concave to the origin... Oh, I didn't get to this issue. Ha! Alright, we gotta go back to the board. I didn't get to the why is it shaped like that. We're not gonna go into any numbers here. I think there's a question that does have numbers on it a little bit. But if your PPC does look like this, that means I always like to start my thinking at the extremes. So let's say we're making all pizza in 0 factories. Okay? The first factory, according to this slope right here, doesn't cost as much pizza. It doesn't cost as much at all. I'm going to go over too much. Doesn't cost as much pizza. According to that slope right there, let me make that slope red. According to that slope right there, doesn't cost as much pizza. Why? Because we take our terrible pizza people and move them over to factories. Right? Take the people that are relatively bad at pizza, so maybe pretty good at factories, move them over first. So we don't give up much and we gain a lot. But as we start to add another factory, and another factory, and another factory, this amount we have to give up goes up. So by the time we get to the end, let's say we get to 6, and then 7. 7 factories. Look how much that last factory cost us, according to the slope. I'm just going by the slope of the curve. How many pieces does that guy cost us? A ton, right? I don't know how much that is, but certainly more than that. The slope went from flat to steeper, and making another factory cost us more, and making another factory cost us more, and now making another factory costs us a lot. Why does it cost us so much? Because now we're having to take our best pizza people. We left them on pizza making as long as we could. But now we're having to take our best pizza people away from pizza making and put them on factory making. They're probably our worst factory makers. And that applies to all resources, not just people, but land and capital as well. So, why do we get this concave shape? Well, first of all, it's because some resources have different abilities than others. if all resources are exactly the same, you get a steady decline. So your PPC is shaped is flat. That's the only other reasonable shape. Your PPC becomes flat. If all resources are identical, which is unrealistic, but sometimes they'll ask you to assume that. Here's good A, here's good B. You get a flat PPC. You will never ever. It's nonsense. It cannot possibly happen that you will get a convex PPC. Don't draw one. Don't answer questions that ask you about one. That is always a trick. That's always a wrong answer. It's a lie. There's no such thing as a convex PPC. They're either unrealistic and flat because all the resources are exactly the same, or resources have varying abilities, and so you get this shape. And I forgot to say something really important. What do we call this idea that to gain a factory, we got to give up some pizzas? And to gain a factory, we got to give up even more. And what do we call this idea to build a factory, we got to give up some of our next best alternative? Opportunity cost. And if it starts out small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, this is increasing opportunity cost. So concave to the origin means that slope gets steeper, and you have what's called the law of increasing opportunity cost, because resources have different abilities. So let's see. We can answer number 3. Which of the following is true if the PPC is curved? There's a curved line concave to the origin. Got to have something to do with opportunity cost, increasing opportunity cost, or resources having varying abilities. Resources are perfectly substitutable. No, that means they're the same. You don't want them to be the same. It is possible to produce more of both products, not if you're on the PPC. That would only be true if you're inside the PPC. Both products are equally capable of satisfying consumer wants. PPC is not about consumer wants, it's about production. It's about the supply side, not the demand side. The prices of the two products are the same. I don't want the same, and I don't like this answer. I like E. As more of one good is produced, more and more of the other good must be given up, increasing opportunity costs. All right. We'll start to really roll now because I just answered about 20 of these questions. All right, and I'm not sure if this fits. Which of the following is true? And you can't see it on the video. So it says, which of the following is true of the concept of increasing opportunity costs? All right, so I'm going to look for something like resources are different, or the shape is concave to the origin. It is unimportant in command economies because of central planning. All right, there is an idea that I don't really teach very well. There's 3 basic types of economies. There's traditional, like Indian tribes and things like that. All right. There are command economies, which are totalitarian, sometimes communist nations, where the government makes all the decisions about economics. And then there are capitalist or free enterprise economies, free market economies, the 3 names: capitalist, free enterprise, free market, where the market answers all the questions about the economy. All right, we'll get to those in just a second. But that's not the answer here. All right, it suggests that the use of resource, and then by the way, actually, those are all ideal types that don't really exist. All systems are some mix of command or free market. Even North Korea probably has some secret black markets where people are buying and selling according to market prices, not government prices. All right, and the United States has some elements of command economy. Anyway, it suggests that the use of resources to produce a set of goods and services means that as more of one is produced, some of the other must be sacrificed. It does suggest that. So does a flat one. So when I did this earlier, I was skeptical of this answer. I went hunting for another better answer and couldn't find one. So I went back and put B. All right, let me see. It is irrelevant that the PPC is convex to the origin. That never happens. That's always a trick. It suggests that the unlimited wants can be fulfilled. That is, of course, ridiculous. We can never fulfill unlimited wants. And it means that resources are plentiful and opportunities to produce greater amounts of goods and services are unlimited. That never happens. So it's got to be B. There was no better answer. Let's go to 5. Oh, I like these. To be considered scarce, I don't like this one in particular, but I do like these usually. To be considered scarce, remember, scarce means limited and desirable. So it's 1 and 3. Of course, not free. If it's free, it's not scarce. You can have as much as you want with no opportunity cost. That never happens. That's one of our assumptions, is there's no such thing as free. No such thing as a free lunch, we say in economics, if we're kind of cheesy. All right. The basic economic problem, which is unlimited resources. Scarce resources, scarce resources and unlimited wants, which leads to opportunity cost, which leads to decision making and opportunity cost. So let's see which ones of those are on the list. You can see the basic problem of economics and opportunity cost. You can see it on the PPC. The fallacy of composition is something totally different. We'll run down those as soon as I finish those questions as major fallacies. The ceteris paribus assumption is just a way of looking at the world by saying we're going to hold all other things equal. So that doesn't really relate to the that's an economics thing. It's important. It means all other things are equal. We're going to hold everything else equal and only adjust one factor, price, and see what happens to quantity. All right? We'll change taxes and see what happens to GDP. We'll hold everything else constant because that's our only way to legitimately deal with the interconnections of economics. But that doesn't have anything to do with the fundamental problem of economics. I like 1 and 2. I would have put 1 and 2 only. All right. Hey, let's run through those fallacies real quick. We have composition, which is referenced here. That fallacy means it's wrong. It sounds good, but it's wrong. So this sounds good, but it's wrong. Assuming that what's good for the one must be good for the many. And the classic example is, suppose you decided to produce hats. You started making a fortune. Would it be good for everybody in Argyle to open up a hat shop? No, because then the supply of hats would be so great, hats would be worthless, and everybody would lose. All right? That's the fallacy of composition. Composition means adding up. Assuming that adding everybody up and doing the same thing will benefit everybody just like it benefits an individual. There's also the post hoc fallacy, written out all the way. It's called post hoc ergo propter hoc. That is a failure when you assume that event A happens, time goes by, and event B happens, you think, well, A must have caused B. Every time I do my rain dance, it rains. Or at least it happened one time. Alright? I took aspirin yesterday. Shortly after, I felt really bad. And I thought, what if that's causing it? But I was guilty of the post hoc fallacy. I thought taking the aspirin made me feel bad. There was some third factor involved because we looked it up on the internet and that's not what was happening. Internet never lies. That's another assumption of economics. Not really. Alright, and then there's the confusing correlation with causation. Just because two things generally go together and are statistically correlated, they seem to move together up or down, or one goes up and causes the other to go down. Just because two things are correlated doesn't mean one is causing the other. Income and education are generally positively correlated. High income goes with high education. High education goes with high income. Does that mean the education is causing the income? Does that mean the income is causing the education? Or some third factor like just your genes, your genetics is causing you to be both rich and highly educated? We can't assume that without more information. So those are the three major fallacies in economics. Or at least in logic that we sometimes fall prey to in economics and you should avoid. All right. We're going to go to, by the way, number 28 or 30 today. Because this one has 36 questions, and that's too many for one session. Okay? Which of the following goods is considered scarce? All of them? As long as they're limited and desirable, and all of those are? You don't think that's it's certainly desirable. It's certainly limited. There's only so much to go around. And you only have so many years of your waking life to get educated. So, all resources, all desirable things are scarce. Unless you get into weird things like emotion and, love is unlimited. They won't ask you about, philosophical stuff like that. All right. This is opportunity cost again. The value, the best alternative foregone when a decision is made is opportunity cost. Why did they ask me that same question just a second ago? All right, which of the following problems do all economic systems face? So I'm going to bump over and review something really quickly that I don't do a good job of in class. It's so non-mathy. It's kind of trivial. But three major types of economic systems are traditional, command, which is where the government commands all the decisions, and then free markets. We also call them free enterprise or capitalism. All right? And because of the fundamental problem of economics, because of scarce resources and unlimited wants, every economy has to answer 3 questions. Without the fundamental problem of economics, these 3 questions wouldn't come up. But they have to make these are the most 3 basic decisions at the macro level. What are we going to make? We can't make everything. We have limited resources. So what are we going to make? So what to make? I'm going to put my questions are what, how, and for whom. But they should all say to produce after each one. What, how, and for whom. What to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it. What are we going to make? How are we going to make it? Who gets it? All right? And this chart is very easy. The AP test knows it's easy, and so they like to trick you into saying there's such a thing as a pure command economy where the government answers all 3, or a pure market economy where the market answers all 3. But it's a very easy chart. Tradition or custom answers all those questions in a traditional society, although they do have some elements of command and market. The government answers all these questions in a command economy like North Korea or the old Soviet Union or Cuba. And then in the market, what are we going to produce? Well, that's determined by the market. Specifically, what is their demand for? Demand drives what we produce. If there's demand for it, it will get produced so people can make money with the profit motive. How do we make it? We typically produce it in the lowest cost. Another way to say that is most efficient way. If you produce it in a high cost way, you'll go out of business. Your competitors will undercut your prices and drive you out of business. And who gets it? That's determined by the market. Specifically, if you want to be more specific, you would say you get access to goods and services because you are able and willing to provide the world with resources. All right? If you're able and willing to provide your society with valued resources, you tend to make a high income. Like doctors are willing to do something that is hard, go to medical school and be a doctor. They're able to do it. Not everybody's smart enough to do that or has good functional hands to do surgery with. All right? They're willing and able to do that, provide society with this valued resource. And so they tend to have a high income and access to a lot of our products. They get a lot of our stuff. Or they go gamble it all away. Depending on which doctor you're talking about. And I just say that to give me some time to adjust. There we go. The opportunity cost of building a new high school. They're trying to trick me into saying it's the money cost of buying the stuff. And it's not. It's what we could have done instead. Let me see if that's on here. Is it the expense of the new desks? No, that's a trick. Is it the expense of the hiring the teachers? No, that's a trick. It's the other goods and services which we must sacrifice to build a high school. We could have built a bridge or, I don't know, fed the poor. Alright? This one looks, people who don't know what they're doing would put the bond levy thing because that sounds the most complicated. Alright? But we're not looking for, we don't need to assume that these are ultra hard. We need to assume that we can handle all of them. Whew, look at this guy. 11. In which way does a straight line PPC differ from a concave PPC? Remember, a straight line assumes all resources are the same, and there's constant opportunity cost as opposed to increasing opportunity cost. When the curve does this, drops off quickly, that's increasing opportunity cost because resources vary. So let's see. A straight line PPC has a decreasing opportunity cost. That never ever happens. There's no such thing as a convex PPC, and there's no such thing as a decreasing opportunity cost. That's just nonsense. Straight line PPC has a constant opportunity cost. I like that. It's got a constant slope. The slope of the PPC is opportunity cost. I like B. Let's check the others. Has an increasing opportunity cost. No, that would be a concave one. A nice curvy concave one. Does not show opportunity cost. Don't be ridiculous. And there's no difference between the two. They just needed another answer to put on there. Alright. Let's go to 12. There's a couple on here that I really like. I couldn't wait to get to them. The law of increasing opportunity cost is reflecting in the shape of the PPC that's concave to the origin. That's A. Alright. Yeah, they keep asking the same questions. Okay, now they're going to ask me a couple of questions about this figure here. So you'll want to look at that figure. I'm going to have to move my projector away from it. It looks like we got a few points on the PPC, one inside that is attainable but inefficient, or we have unemployment, and then one outside. And I guarantee you they're going to try to trick you into saying, hey, what happens if unemployment goes down? And then you think, oh, that's good. It is. I bet that moves your PPC out. That's a trick. Because those unemployed people that you have now employed, that's what causes unemployment to go down, is you put people to work. Those unemployed people that you now employed were there. They could have possibly worked. The curve is your best effort possibilities. You're just not cutting it. That just moves you from point inside to a point on. All right? And then one more thing they're going to ask me about, I think, has to do with choosing capital goods rather than consumer goods, which helps me for the future, but not for the present. Let's see. If the country is currently producing at point C, which we look back up here, and that's this combination of lots of farm products. If you don't see that as lots of farm products, draw a dotted line over there and say, oh, that is a lot. And not very many computers. So they're producing at point C. How could it? It can produce more computers by doing what? Well, going that way. Going to the right, producing more computers. That means going to D or F. Wouldn't D be more computers? If you don't know, draw a dotted line and be like, well, it is less farm products. So draw a dotted line down here and say, oh yeah, that is more computers. All right? Literally, not very many. I'm going to put a number on there. I don't need one, but just to help me. 5. Look at point D. 20. Lots. So it'd be a move to point D. Is that on the answer choices? I think that's choice D. Now it's choice C. Point D. Whoa. Whoa. All right, that's confusing. They usually try to avoid that on the AP test. That way. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, they could move to A because it's slightly to the right. Well, since we were already on the PPC, what do you think the best answer is? And the one that's even farther to the right. So this is not just more computers; it's even more. So yeah, I agree. This is a bad question. I agree with you. This is a bad question, but being a good test taker, I would put D. This feels the best. It's splitting the least amount of hairs. All right. I have to make less arguments to choose point D. All right, 14. Which of the following statements about the PPC is true? Point A is not attainable. Remember, point A is inside the PPC. It's just totally attainable. I don't like that choice. Point D is not attainable. All right, no, point D is on the curve. All the points on the curve are our frontier. They are possible. Point C, the relative position of point C and D reflect production alternatives rather than relative prices. I like that. I don't know this business about relative prices, but it does reflect production alternatives. We could have C or we could have D. Those are two choices. That's another thing that people who don't understand the PPC never realize. Is they fail to see, they think, oh yeah, we're at the PPC. That's us, that curve out there. We can't be at every point on the curve. This curve represents thousands of points, combos of farm and computers that we could have. We got to pick a point. All right, so here's two of our alternatives. Neither is better. They cannot possibly ask you which one is better. But they're alternatives. You are not a curve. You have to pick a point. All right. I like C okay, though. Elimination of unemployment. Oh, here's the trick. I knew it was coming. Elimination of unemployment will move the production possibilities curve to the right. No. The PPC knows about those people that are unemployed. It's out there because of those people that are unemployed. It knows you're not cutting it. You're just simply inside the curve. It knows that if you did employ those people, you could be out here somewhere. But you're not. So eliminating unemployment, reducing the unemployment rate moves you from a point inside to a point on. If I was making the AP test, I'd put that on there because it's a trick, and they like tricking me. And I would just put that on. I would. It tests whether you truly understand what's going on. All right, point E lies outside the PPC because it represents a combination not desired. No, it's not. It's because we can't get there. I'm cheap. How can we get E? Oh, what if we put all of our resources to work? We turned our machines on and we started to use our unused land. Would that help us move out? No, because all those unused resources, the PPC knows about them. It shows the possibility that we could use them. We're just operating inside if we have unused resources. Unused resources is another way to say unemployment. What if the country's resources are shift to encourage more efficient? Does the PPC know that you could be being more efficient? Yes. It's out there saying you could be more efficient. Come on out here to the curve. But if you're being inefficient, you're inside the curve. If improvements in technology occurred in either one, that would work. Let's see. If firms decreased their output of computers, and the nation used more of its scarce resources to produce farm products, that would just move you to some other point, because you'd have to give up some computers. All right, which of the following points would most likely lead to a rightward shift of the PPC over time? This is something that I haven't addressed today, and this is a good, solid AP question. What helps the curve move out? Either better technology, or let's say it like this, better resources, maybe healthier workers, or smarter workers, or better machines called technology. Better resources, or just flat out more resources, right? More of the same, more humans, more machines. What do we call machines in economics? Capital. And that's something we can build. We don't really build humans. We don't produce them in economics terms. All right? And we can't really produce more land necessarily. I guess we could plant trees, but that's a shaky argument to make. But we could definitely build machines, factories, plant equipment, right? So capital is unique. It is both something we can choose to produce, and it helps us produce more for the future. So they like to have a question on the AP test that says, what would help you produce more in the future? What would move your PPC out? By the way, moving the PPC out is called economic growth. Another way to draw it is to have the long-run aggregate supply curve, long-run aggregate supply, LRAS. GDP here, price level here, full employment level of GDP here, move it to the right. Those are both ways to show economic growth. Moving this curve out or this curve to the right. But either way, one way to do that is to choose, instead of choosing point C, say choose point D, or even maybe even better, point F. Why is point D help you with growth in the future? Because what are you making? You're not making farm. I guess this is poorly expressed. I guess this must be like food, okay? Farm products. Well, food is great because you get to eat it right now. Makes you happy now. But what does this provide for you? Am just said it. Capital. Oh, Cutler said capital. Here we're building more computers, and that is a productive resource that will help us build even more in the future. So this person chose specific goods, farm products and computers. Sometimes they'll flat out say consumer goods, which are used right now, or capital goods, which we don't get happiness from now, but help us produce more in the future, and will move our PPC out, will lead to economic growth. Because we're generating, not land, not labor, we're generating capital, one of our four resources. Where's that question? Oh, there it is. The opportunity cost of producing an additional unit of product A is how much of product B do you have to get up? We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. There you go, it's D. It's the same question again. Which of the following would cause a leftward shift of the PPC? So that would be a movement in. So that's got to be less resources or worse resources. Usually worse resources is worse technology, worse capital. Okay? So an increase in unemployment, would that move your curve in? That's tempting. It's a trick. That would simply cause you to move from on the curve to inside of the curve. Because you could put those people back to work. It's possible. The curve knows it. It'll stay there. It'll just put you inside of it. Inflation, I don't think so. I'm looking for something about less resources or worse resources. An increase in capital equipment, that would move you out. A decrease in consumer demand might lead to unemployment, which again doesn't move the curve in. It just moves you in, and it says you could put those people back to work. A decrease in working age population, that's less resources, right? Which resource is that?
Labor.
That's less laborers. So that would actually move your possibilities in. You just don't have the laborers you used to. That could happen. Some sort of war or plague or something. Nearly happened to me earlier this week. All right. Which of the following would cause an outward or rightward shift of the PPC? Let's think about unemployment as a trick. That would move you inside. Trick. More capital equipment would do it. Okay, now, here we go. This is an AP question right here now. It's, I think question 21 is flawed, but 20 is just fine. Okay, 20 and 21 use this chart here. See if I can zoom out. May not be able to see it all on the camera, so you'll have to look at your paper. So two nations, Mars and Venus, each produce food and clothing. So these are different combos. These are different points in the PPC, right? This is the table. If we plotted all these, we'd get a PPC. All right? The asterisks indicate their current point of production. Okay, so what? In Mars, the opportunity cost of obtaining the first 2 units of food. So I don't care what they're making right now. I want to go to food. Smart people think on the extremes and then work their way out. The first 2 units of food, those two. What's the cost of producing those 2 units of food? Because we used to be producing clothing, 30 of them. Now we only got 24 of them. What was the cost? 6 clothings. C. 6. All right. I do not like the next question because of the nature of curves. This would only be true if there were straight line segments. But I believe the next question, in Venus, the opportunity cost of the first, I think it's A. If you get one, here, now look at, it's a little flawed though, because it's not just 1 and 4, 1 and 4, 1 and 4. The first unit of food, well, so just going 1/4 of the way there will take us 1/4 of the way here. Does everybody agree that going up 1 is 1/4 of the way to the next level? Yes. 1/4 of the way to the 4. What's 1/4 of the way from 40 to 32? That's 8, so it's just 2 down, right? Yeah? So it's 2 units of clothing, but it's really some sort of continuously changing amount, so I doubt that would be on the AP test, because your math calculus people would be up in arms like, no. The Ramirez's of the world would be upset. Let's see what that is. I love this one though. I love it. You'll want to stick around for this one if you have any time. Do you know why? No, it's okay. It's okay. Which of the following is correct based on the concept of comparative advantage? So, remember comparative advantage was this idea of building an output box, or we have to decide is an output problem or an input problem, and we have to compare opportunity costs. We've got to draw an opportunity cost box and pick the lowest opportunity cost, and that will tell us who specializes. And remember in those boxes, we assume that they're either making all food and no clothing, or no clothing and all food, that they're going to specialize, right? That's the idea of comparative advantages. Choose your comparative advantage good and specialize. So if I go back to the chart, I get to ignore all the middle points and only think about the points where they're specializing. Where's the ones where they're specializing?
Oh, I thought they were doing the asterisk.
Yeah, I know. It's a trick. We don't even use that asterisk business. I hope not, because I got an answer not using the asterisk. I'm going to show you a magic trick, though. I'm only considering these points. This comparative advantage is all about specialize in your comparative advantage good, your low opportunity cost good, and then trade. And it's impossible to have a comparative advantage in both. No matter how good you are, you can never have a comparative advantage in both. You can have an absolute advantage, just that's a question of who's better. You can be better at both. It's impossible to have a comparative advantage in both. All right? So you have to build an opportunity cost box with Mars's numbers being 30 clothings or 10 foods, and Venus is being 40 clothings or 20 foods. Who's better, by the way, at both? What? Looks like Venus is better at both. They produce 40 clothing. If Mars specializes, they only get 30. And Venus produces 20 foods. If Mars specializes, they only get 10 foods. And man, I don't want to do that, and I forgot how to do it. It's really hard. This is what I forgot when I took the AP test. And it takes a lot of time. This is the type of question, if I can't sort of sneak my way through it and get the right answer anyway, which I'm about to, I would skip this one and mark it and say, I probably can get this one right using my opportunity cost box, but why waste time on one question? Why not go fly through a bunch of other questions? So let's see if we can sneak our way
Is
through.
it an opportunity cost question?
Is the conclusion of comparative advantage ever just make some mix and don't trade? Is that ever the conclusion? The conclusion is always specialize in your low opportunity cost good, your comparative advantage good, and trade. So it can't be A. Let me eliminate A then. It can't be make some weirdo mix and don't trade. Alright, watch this. This is where the magic's going to happen. Mars should specialize in food. That's possible. I'd have to actually figure it out. Or should Mars specialize in clothing? Well, it's got to be one of those, doesn't it? Mars has to pick a... If that's always the answer is one country should specialize in one thing, the other should specialize in the other good, and then they should trade. Mars has to pick something. D. Venus has a comparative advantage in clothing. Can it possibly be answer D? It's got to be B or C. Mars has to pick something. So it can't be D. Well, if D is wrong, now follow me here. If D is wrong, Venus, I guess, must have a comparative advantage in food. So Venus should make food. So what should Mars make? Clothing. Right answer. And I think E is wrong. Mars has an absolute advantage in food. No, they don't. They only make 10 foods and Venus makes 20. The absolute advantage is who's better. You see how I did that? I didn't draw any boxes. I forgot how to do that when I was taking the AP test. But I used my mind brain. Alright? You've got to pick something. So it's got to be B or C. It can't be this one then. And if this is wrong, then Venus should make food, Mars should make clothing. Alright? How far in are we? We at 40 minutes yet? For coming up on 40 minutes, I'll... Okay, let me work this one real quick and then we'll be done. Let me work it the real way. Oh, let's do this. Come back tomorrow and we'll work this one the real way. And I'll upload these to the end. So we're stopping at question 22. We faked our way through it, now we'll work it the real way tomorrow in the next review.